What's up, y'all? Today we are going through a game day graphic that I made with a lot of AI. And when I use AI, I use Midjourney. I have a subscription to that, and then I also use some in Photoshop. So a lot of it's pretty simple. I've been trying to use it more in my workflow, but not let it completely just take over everything that I do. And that's like probably the way you want to do it. You want to use it as a tool, but don't like lean on it as a crutch. So here I am searching for images of lions and bears because that's the game day theme. It's going to be the UAPB Lions versus whatever team it was, the Bears. And so that's going to be the theme of the game day graphic. And so you can kind of go into these AI programs and see like what they'll give you. And you have to like try a few different things to get the looks that you want. And sometimes it doesn't work. And that's probably a good thing because you don't like, for me, you know, if I just searched in whatever I wanted and it popped up exactly what I wanted, it just feels like cheating. So at the end of the day, I couldn't really make it produce anything with lions versus bears. So I just had to do separate images of lions and separate images of bears. This is also an AI generated background. Don't know what the prompt was, but you know, probably something like dark, scary, scene with sunset scene, you know, with a river running through it, something like that. Basically it's all just trial and error. You can just kind of keep adding and taking away words as it gives you what you want. And then here it's just really cool because you can like expand any image inside Photoshop. You can also do this in Midjourney. So it just depends on what you want to do. A lot of times Midjourney does, I would say, a better job, but then sometimes you don't really know like if you want to expand it and how you want to expand it until you're using it in Photoshop already. And Photoshop does a pretty good job usually. So yeah, here I used Photoshop to expand the image, and then I just cropped it as I needed to. So then I found some images of a bear, or AI generated some images of bears, and these didn't have to be perfect. They're not like perfect. It was kind of hard to make it generate like a view from the back side of bears because it just kept producing images from the front. But eventually I got these two, and none of them are perfect, but I knew I was going to be like using them as kind of foreground images. So I knew like not like the legs and stuff weren't going to be fully seen and whatnot. So just remember that as you're going, you know, if you don't need a perfect image, then you don't have to have it generate a perfect image because sometimes it can have a difficult time doing that. So sometimes you can just hide the problems that it brings. So I ended up generating a lot of these images with just white backgrounds, and you can put that in your description so that it makes them with white backgrounds. And sometimes that's easier. And you can use green backgrounds as well, or like a red background. Kind of just depends on the image, because sometimes like white backgrounds don't work as well, whereas like a green background has a lot of contrast to the lion, and there's some white in a lion, but there is no green usually in a lion. So when you're doing the remove background, when you're using the remove background tool in Photoshop, it can work better sometimes with different colored backgrounds. So just think about that when you're generating your images and when you're finding your images online. And then another thing to think about, and this is kind of what I'm doing here, is like think about where your images are and where your background image is so that they line up at like the right point of view, because you can tell by like where their feet are and how the image looks like it's taken of each subject. It needs to line up. The camera angle needs to line up with all the lions, the bears, the player, the background. So you can see the camera angle for the athlete looks like it's kind of like at the football height maybe. So that's why I put his like waist and like sort of the football close to the horizon line. And then the lions, you know, they'll show up as you generate them. They'll all be they'll look like photos taken from different angles, as well as these bears. And so you just want to make sure you're lining up the angles of each subject to the background well. Here I am blending in all the images into the background, which is what when I say to you guys, like, blend your images well, this is what I mean. Like, make it all look like it's a part of the same photo. And so here I'm giving them like some depth of field blur. So I'm blurring them a little bit because they're closer to the camera, and then using some tools to make them look like they have the same color as like the background. And you don't want to make it like, you don't want to blend them in too much. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes it looks better than other times, but you can see here the bears just look like they are a part of the scene now, whereas the lions don't. They look very separated from the scene. Here I'm using a tilt shift blur to blur just the background image. And so where he's standing is not blurry, but like the background with the tree and the horizon is blurry. And so that just gives like a good camera effect with like the bears in the foreground. They're a little bit blurry and the background's a little bit blurry. So it all just kind of like ties it together a little bit better, and helps pull it together. So I kind of use the same effect on all of the subjects there with the lighting and the color, using exposure and color balances. And then just did the same thing with the athlete, but then I needed to go in and fix part of his cutout because it didn't do a good job when I removed the background. So sometimes you have to go in and, you know, brush it a little bit yourself. But so it came out a little bit dark, so I had to brighten it a little bit. And, you know, you can mess around a lot with the effects you're using on each separate image because they're going to be in different places in the image. And like, you know, that tree back there, you don't see a lot of detail in it. So therefore that tells me that lion in the back also probably doesn't have a lot of detail that you can see because it's like close to the tree. And then here I like kind of trying to like do stuff like this too, using AI to blend like feet in with the background image. So I just put like a box over their feet and then see if AI does a better job than I would of making their foot look like it's actually there. Like, you know, for instance, his is standing on the water. Like at some point I think it puts like a reflection in and then like just colors it the right way. And so that can be really helpful. But sometimes you just have to do it yourself. And then here, like I said, I'm just going in, cutting out the background cutting out the athlete the way that I want it, and lining him up close to back to where he was. And then here I'm kind of brushing in some of the background over like their feet and his feet to try and make it look like it's all like blended into the same thing, because sometimes there will be part of the background image that is like in front of them, if that makes sense. So I'm just brushing that back in front of them. And then I ended up giving them all this lighting effect with the sun being behind them and the lighting being behind them. You can take that like red glow or like the red orange glow that's coming from the lighting in the background, and then add that as like a inner shadow or a inner glow to their image to kind of make it pop out but still look like it's a part of the scene. And then here I'm just using a selective color to give all of the animals a similar look and make sure that they look like they are part of the scene, and then adding in that same glow that's on the outside, just to make it look like they have that back rim lighting, basically, just like the athlete. And the key here is not to do it too much. It's like you want to maybe give it a little bit. Sometimes it doesn't look good at all, but sometimes you can do it and it kind of like makes them pop. But the key is to like kind of make them pop but not separate them from the background. And that's basically it.